Welcome to How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, the stories behind the people driving results in the nonprofit sector.
Our job really is to bring nonprofits' missions alive and help their dreams come true. It's not so much about the money. The money is kind of the gas in the tank that gets you where you want to go.
Today on the podcast is Michael Rubin, principal and founder at Michael D. Rubin Associates. Michael's been running his consultancy since 2002 and has built his business to support 4 other consultants to help meet his clients' needs. He has a wealth of knowledge to share from in this episode. Enjoy. A quick announcement. As a listener of the podcast, we are making the Engagement Fundraising audiobook available to you free of charge. Just go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. As a thank you for listening, we wanted to give everyone free access to Greg's Engagement Fundraising audiobook that you can get on Audible or Apple Books for $15. Once again, just visit imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. That's imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and we hope you enjoy Greg's book. Now, on to the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Can you first introduce yourself and how you got into fundraising?
Sure. I'm Michael Rubin. I'm based in St. Louis, and I'm principal of Michael D. Rubin Associates. That firm has been in existence for 17 years.
Fantastic. And I was looking over your background. It looks like healthcare fundraising was kind of where you got your start. What got you into that vertical, and how does it inform your approach to fundraising today?
Today, you can go to school in many more places than when I was thinking about getting into fundraising. But fundraising is actually my second career. I started out of college as an actuary for a few years. Definitely was not my thing. Took some time to figure out what it was that I really had an interest in and what I wanted to do. Managed to talk my way into an entry-level position at what was then Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Medical Center in Chicago, which is now called Rush University Medical Center, on the development staff, on the fundraising staff. It was like going to graduate school in fundraising. And today you can actually go to graduate school in fundraising, but then there were very few places where you could do that. And I would say, it was a fantastic place because we had a core of really talented people. We were probably raising $8 or $10 million a year. This was in the mid-'80s. The foundation of that fundraising approach in many hospitals and healthcare organizations is that the grateful patient is the person who is the most motivated and probably most excited about giving. And so we work closely with those patients and with their doctors to help them make good decisions about making an impact and helping in research and education and excellent patient care. In a teaching institution, those are the 3 things that are most important.
Yeah. And then how was your work at the Lincoln Park Zoo different from that? It is a bit different as far as the vertical you're working within.
Right. So completely different. Although the fundraising part was the same, but a very public institution. It's actually a free zoo like St. Louis Zoo is. Mm-hmm. It revolved around a lot of events. It was an organization that was central to the community. People cared about it a lot, and they had made the shift from not being so much of a public institution, but making the shift toward conservation and education. Zoos, played very different roles than they did a generation or 2 ago. Not only was it a chic and fun and great place to be and to hang out and to be involved in, but they were also doing some very serious conservation and environmental education things, not only in the U.S. and Chicago, but throughout the world. So a very different experience, really amazing place.
So what inspired you then to make the switch to become a consultant and work for a bunch of nonprofits?
Right. I worked for 3 major nonprofits on staff over about 19 years. And after about 19 or 20 years, I felt like I began to see the same cycles over and over again. And I had always toyed with the idea of being a consultant, but I never made the leap. I had just reached a crossroads in many ways. And this was in 2001, and I thought that might be the right time to at least give it a shot. And I sort of liked the flexibility of it at the time. We had young kids. That just helped a lot to be able to have that flexibility and to be my own boss, which sounds very romantic, but also very scary at the same time.
Yeah, it's all on your shoulders if something goes wrong.
It's the difference in mentality from being an employee to being an owner of a business, which I don't think people think about very carefully as they get into consulting. It's a completely different mindset.
How long did it take for you to get that mindset where you were comfortable with that and not being overly concerned with that aspect of it?
It didn't take me too long to get into it. Part of the reason for that was I got a fairly big client right away, maybe even too big of a client. Mm-hmm. It gave me a little bit of stability, first of all. And then I had also read a couple of books around that time about being your own boss and investing in real estate and that sort of thing. So it gave me some inspiration to both run and grow my own business. So both those things were helpful.
Yeah. So where did the initial clients come from? Was it prior relationships with the work you had already done in fundraising?
A little bit. I was in Chicago at the time. Even before I had left my other job, I had made contact with somebody. There was a brand new Jewish high school that was just starting up, and they only had 25 kids in the whole school in ninth grade because they were going to add a grade each year. And they really needed somebody to help really do all the fundraising. It was almost like I was a director of development, but I was doing it as a consultant.
So I noticed that while you were running your own consultancy, you were also with the Ostroff Group. What was your relationship with them, it being like a separate business from your own?
I worked with the Ostroff Group for about 4 or 5 years while I maintained my own business, and I was a subcontractor for this group that had some excellent clients, worked out of New York and Florida, but they happened to have had a client in St. Louis where we had moved in 2002. They really needed an on-the-ground campaign manager. It was a way to get involved with bigger clients and bigger campaigns than I would have been able to do on my own at that time. Mm-hmm. It was a turning point in my consulting career because it gave me access and relationships to the entire Jewish community in St. Louis, and I had just moved here not very long before.
Looking back at your business, at the very beginning in 2002, what did it look like then versus now? Has your business model evolved with different pricing, the services you offer? How's it shifted over the years?
At the beginning, and I think many people probably can identify with this, I was just thrilled that I was making a living and that I had some clients while I built things up and got experience as a consultant. I was an experienced fundraiser, but not an experienced consultant. It's transformed in every single way over 17 years, whereas now I'm at the point where I've gotten to a certain level that has been very helpful, very rewarding, more work than I can handle. And so I know that I can only do that with the help of a lot of others now. And I'm very interested in both running a business and growing a business in a way that I wasn't 17 years ago. I didn't even have a concept of it, but I found that I like running and growing a business and the business development part of it as much as I do the consulting part.
Was there a big lesson you learned in the early days that you learned from and was like, oh, I'll never do that again? Thankfully, I learned that lesson right now.
Probably managing a client. I don't know if I can think of any one instance, but just listening to clients, listening to what their needs are, managing them. I think the pricing part of things and the fees and even proposal writing, business proposal writing, were things that I just didn't know very much about. That's one of the things I learned in the Ostroff Group, how to be a good consultant and manage people's expectations while still being a good listener and meeting their needs. Those things were things you just have to pick up over time by experience. There certainly weren't any podcasts in 2002 that I was aware of where you could pick up this kind of information even anecdotally. There was a book that was referred to me early on. I now hear is kind of the classic consulting book. It was called $1 Million Consulting. Now it's probably 20 years old, maybe even 25 years old, which is ancient history. But still, a lot of the things in there are still very pertinent, and I really got a lot out of it. I'm sure it's still being sold by Amazon.
Now, your current business, what do you focus on services-wise?
Our job really is to bring nonprofits' missions alive and help their dreams come true. It's not so much about the money. The money is kind of the gas in the tank that gets you where you want to go. We probably spend about 60% of our work or 65% of our work on campaigns, planning and executing campaigns. And that can mean the campaign management itself. And it can also mean the planning that leads up to those. So campaign feasibility studies and even some pre-campaign planning before you get to the point where you do a feasibility study. We also do quite a bit in board training and helping boards to be better ambassadors and solicitors. We do a fair amount in major gift and planned gift programs, in internal assessments to analyze and kind of make recommendations about how development offices can be better structured and positioned and have the right skills and tools. That's probably the most of what we do.
Okay. And I noticed on your website you offer a referral network for work that you just aren't a specialist in or want to take on. How valuable has that been for your clients and them building trust and things like that?
I would say very valuable. I always hate to turn work away, but there are times when you just have to be honest about what's on your plate and what you can really handle and do a good job on it. Because if you don't do a good job on it, it doesn't do your client any good and doesn't do you any good. So yes, there are a few other consultants, one or two in particular that I definitely refer to. There are also services that we don't do, like executive search, that I'm happy to recommend, and events, which we don't do. And it's nice to have those people. In addition, we have strong relationships with marketing communication firms, and we work alongside of them, particularly on campaigns. And we will recommend 2 or 3 to bring to the table and let the client make their choice. But it makes you a more valuable consultant to have those names and vendors right at hand, where you can either refer the work out directly or you can bring them to the table and work with them collaboratively.
And will those vendors also give you business as well?
Yes, it definitely works that way. If you can understand what somebody's business is, know what a good referral is for them, get to know them and have them be a trusted partner, then I think those things come naturally. It doesn't happen out of the clear blue sky.
Yeah.
For 4 or 5 years, I belonged to a international business referral group called BNI. While it didn't do a lot for actual business for me, it did develop a strong referral network of printers, marketing communications firms, other related kinds of businesses, sometimes lawyers, sometimes accountants. Helped with those things a lot.
You mentioned earlier on that you now have 4 consultants within your business. Are there others outside that help you meet your clients' needs, whether it's like a graphic designer that you work with a lot?
Yes, definitely. Certainly the marketing communication firms are pretty important when you get into campaigns and messages and just the right image, certain for printed materials, direct mail stuff. Our firm belongs to the Association of Philanthropic Counsel, APC, which is a national association of fundraising consultants that are small to medium-sized firms. We have about 30 firms nationally. Through that association, we've begun working with other partners, Donor Search and MarketSmart, do wealth analytics and other kinds of major gifts programs. Those kind of services can be extremely helpful, and they make you more valuable as a consultant, even though there might not be a direct compensation or fees that come with it. I don't want to make money doing that. I want people to get the best service. So if it's something that they need and it's something that can improve their fundraising, I want them to do it.
Right. So in your business today, what is your approach for finding new clients and getting new business?
My approach has evolved over the years. I actually take it pretty seriously, and I have a marketing plan that is committed to paper, which took me a long time to get to. Personal referrals are almost always the best, whether they're clients or former clients who have referred us. Sometimes speaking engagements in St. Louis or in other places in the Midwest are extremely helpful. Just being visible in general, being involved in either our association, AFP or APC, is very helpful. I do a little bit of advertising for some local events, and then I do one national advertising on the AFP website, national. Mm-hmm. One thing that I've had some success with is doing planned out, very specific trips that are just for business development. I do a little bit in St. Louis, but I've definitely done it in Chicago and Cleveland and Nashville and Indianapolis. And in almost every case, if I get the right people to open a door and make a connection, and I simply go in for 20 or 30 minutes and introduce our services, I will almost always get some work out of it.
So what makes an ideal client for you, and have you had to turn down clients because you just didn't think it'd be a good fit?
So I'll answer the second part of that first. I occasionally turn down clients. I'm getting more and more tuned into that. I've worked with a business coach for about a year now. One of the main things that he stresses is alignment with mission, values, and philosophy. You have to know your own alignment and what's important to you and your why before you can decide how good of a match it is with another nonprofit client's mission, values, and philosophy. And I'm beginning to be much more tuned into that. So there are times when I can see the red flags go up because either they want to do things cheaply, they want to do things too quickly, they're not interested in listening to anything that consultants have to say. And there have definitely been at least 2 or 3 clients over the years that I probably should have decided to stop services and just go our separate ways. And I haven't, and I let it go too long. And if I had to do it over again, I would have stopped. It's a very hard thing to do when someone is paying your fees to give up those fees. You have to be in a strong place, both financially and just even emotionally, to be able to do that. In terms of an ideal client, I always go back to one client that we worked with for 3 or 4 years, Central Institute for the Deaf in St. Louis, which is a 100-plus-year-old institution that teaches children with hearing impairments to listen, talk, read, and succeed. See, I've got their motto down. So they don't do sign language. With tremendous teaching and patience and the use of technology, they're able to do that. And they have excellent leadership, very dedicated board. They listened to what we had to say, and they became successful because we had a good partnership. It was an amazing campaign, and they're doing great things still.
So last question before the lightning round. How do you structure your weeks typically?
I wish I could say I was extremely structured. I'm not, but I try to be extremely organized and spend the time on clients where I know it's going to bring the greatest return on investment. And, I would say disproportionately adjust our time, and mine and that of my consultants, to those who are in campaigns usually, or feasibility studies, the planning for those campaigns, where they're working on a specific plan and a specific goal, and there are things that we can help both advise as well as crank out because we're very hands-on and we do a lot of implementation as well as advising. The other piece of things, I spend what I think is a lot of time on business development. It's probably about 15% of my time right now. In fact, I know it's approaching that because I measure it. I feel like both building those relationships and working on people who are in a place to refer us, as well as writing business proposals and following through on those so we can come to some agreement and actually help an organization, takes a ton of time. So that's the best way I can answer that.
And does your business have multiple consultants working on a single project at a time?
Yes, definitely. At least the bigger efforts that can justify that. Mm-hmm. I'm a believer in usually pairing up 2 consultants on one client if the fees can support that, because I think the product is better because the consultants don't always agree on the same approach, but we challenge each other, and I think the product is better because it's 2 heads thinking rather than 1, or sometimes 3.
This episode is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and Engagement Fundraising by Greg Warner. In this quick break, I want to remind everyone to go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to download the Engagement Fundraising audiobook for free. This offer is only available to listeners of the podcast. It's our way of saying thank you for listening, and we really hope you enjoy the book. Once again, go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to take advantage of this promotion, available only to listeners of the podcast. Now, back to the episode. And with that, let's get to the lightning round.
Okay.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Give people the resources and the tools they need to do their job and get out of their way. Check in once in a while and see if they need some guidance or adjustment. Not a completely hands-off philosophy, but just trust that they have the skills and the know-how to do the job, and just let them do their job without micromanaging.
What's your favorite personal productivity habit?
I'd say working with a business coach has been life-changing. Having somebody who's very knowledgeable to be accountable to, but also having a completely different perspective outside even fundraising consulting that I think has been huge.
Do you have a favorite monthly service or subscription you're signed up for?
The St. Louis Business Journal.
What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Probably most people don't know that my wife and I adopted both our kids, who are now 21 and 18. We adopted them at birth so that we had them from just about the moment they were born.
What do clients never ask you that you wish they did?
They rarely ask what percent of the campaigns that you work on have reached their goal.
What's the most common error you see nonprofits make?
They forget that they're actually running a business because they're focused on the soft stuff. Donors both appreciate the mission of the organization, of course, but they also appreciate a well-run organization so that you do what you say you're going to do with their money and you're applying it in the most productive ways.
And what charities do you admire or support?
I already mentioned Central Institute for the Deaf. We help them with a campaign, but we also support them. And we try to make, where we're working on campaigns, we try to support those organizations with pledges. They're not huge. We try to support them with pledges and gifts. I would say Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater St. Louis is another organization that we appreciate. They're doing fantastic work, and we're actually working on a campaign for them right now. And then we worked with a Christian Brothers high school in Chicago called St. Lawrence, which was really outstanding. One of the most outstanding things that they did recently was it was an all-boys high school, and the all-girls high school across the street announced they were closing, and within 3 weeks, the board decided they were going to make their organization co-ed within 3 weeks.
Wow.
And took most of those girls in to their high school, and they haven't looked back. Just to really admire that decision.
Where can people find more information about your services?
Well, that's easy. Our website, which is www.mdrubin.com, mdrubin.com. Also have a LinkedIn page, but I think the website is probably the best place.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael, for your time this morning. It's been great chatting with you.
Well, thank you, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, presented by MarketSmart. If you like the show, make sure to review it in Apple Podcasts and pass it along to a colleague. I also wanted to remind everyone to visit imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to download the Engagement Fundraising audiobook for free. Once again, that's imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. Thanks for listening.